Fox News alert, a woman was killed today during an ICE operation in Minneapolis. An ICE vehicle was stuck in the snow, and while trying to push it out, activists began harassing and blocking their path, boxing them onto the street. A woman parked her car, preventing the ICE agents from leaving, and was ordered to exit the vehicle multiple times. Officers attempted to open her door after she wouldn't comply. That's when she backed up her car and gunned it straight at an ICE agent. The agent opened fire on the driver to defend himself.
What the dude, what the
Kristi Noem, who was in Minneapolis today overseeing operations, is describing it as an act of domestic terrorism.
She had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
Multiple eyewitnesses have confirmed that this activist was screaming, yelling, disrupting ICE operations all day. One witness says she was the main car leading the protest.
You know if she was the target?
I don't know if she was a target. They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
That was her goal.
The woman who lost her life was a self-proclaimed poet from Colorado, with pronouns in her bio. A 37-year-old white woman named Renee Good. The Daily Mail says she leaves behind a lesbian partner and a child from a previous marriage. She was a disruptor, though she considered herself a legal observer, but there's no evidence she had a law degree. Different angles show different things. You can see here the officer was actually hit by the car, and the first round he fired went straight through the front windshield as the car barreled directly at him. When you slow it down, watch the tires. She floors it so hard the tires spin out, and the vehicle heads directly towards the agent, and then bears right later. Kristi Noem says this agent wasn't new. He was well-trained, and he conducted himself by the book. When an agent believes there's a serious threat to his bodily harm or an imminent threat to his life, he's authorized to use deadly force. And this specific officer had been dragged by a car driven by a protester earlier this year in Minneapolis. Cars are a 2,000-pound weapon and have been used repeatedly against ICE agents.
People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way while they go out there and try to disrupt peace and public safety. And Americans deserve better.
This was a split-second decision. He thought he was going to get run over by the car. The woman had been harassing him all day, blocking him, obstructing, not complying. He felt his life was in danger. He'd been throttled by a car before in the same city. Tragic to see someone die. But what would you do?
An angle rule of thumb. Democrats will always side with criminals against law enforcement. Always. And Minnesota Democrats will go even further. Instead of calming the situation, as Mike just referenced, they will incite more violence, especially against ICE agents.
What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets, and in this case, quite literally killing people. So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull.
Wow, he's fast. It had only been a few hours, and the dancing queen had already conducted the definitive investigation. He anointed himself judge and jury, effectively calling the ICE agent a murderer. Frey, with his lies and his ongoing defamation against ICE, has put a target on the backs of every immigration officer on the streets.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead.
What an embarrassment this man is. We all know that if it was the ICE officer who had been shot by a protester, Frey would still be blaming Trump. The administration today was having none of this. Noam believes the video is clear.
This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues.
I want to point out she was at the border earlier today, and she cares about her agents. She flew up to Minneapolis to do that press conference. But we'll wait to see what the investigation finds. But given how dangerous things have gotten out there, these agents are in an almost impossible situation on the streets. The bottom line is Democrats encourage anti-police, anti-ICE hatred because they think it's good for them politically. They cater to radical constituents who believe that all ICE agents are racist, enforcing illegitimate laws, and therefore they deserve to be threatened, they deserve to be harassed, they deserve to be put in imminent danger of bodily harm. But they claim, of course, the Democrats, to dread these moments.
We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. Not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it. They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America.
His short little pants are on fire there. They're all desperate to change the subject, though, aren't they, from the Somali fraud investigation, which is exposing the corruption of their constituents. Governor Walz was thrilled to be talking about something else today. But he was as duplicitous as ever, calling for calm as he condemned the ICE operation and, of course, the Trump administration.
Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever, and I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed. And they did it. Let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors. I encourage you to use your First Amendment rights and all of your constitutional rights, but do so in a peaceful manner.
Okay. If anyone has blood on their hands here, it's Walz himself. Let's not forget what he said just a few months ago.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
Foreign torture? I mean, look, other than calling in the National Guard, which he did, as Mike referenced, of course, that's smart tonight, the radicals in power have learned nothing from the violent chaos of the Floyd riots. And I was there shortly after that covering it. Minneapolis police abandoned their own precinct in 2020 to arsonists. Total chaos. Hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Of course, it spread all across the United States. So rather than de-escalating the situation, what the Democrats and radicals do is they stoke the worst instincts in people. Democrats know this, and they're fine with it. So we get what? We get car ramming, we get doxing, attacking agents with bricks, rocks, thrown at moving vehicles, even shots taken at them, as we saw in Dallas. So Democrats tonight should be ashamed of themselves. Voters, come on, Minnesota. Wait, you're great people. Pay attention to who your politicians are really representing.
I do want to turn our attention now to those politicians in Minnesota. ICE says the woman, quote, weaponized her vehicle and an officer, quote, fired defensive shots. It's a tragedy. A woman is dead, and that demands seriousness. It demands facts, and it demands due process. We'll wait to see whether this ICE officer acted responsibly or appropriately. That matters because the facts matter. And it must be made, those facts, that conclusion, on evidence, not politics. What we don't need to wait for, though, today is judging the behavior of the mayor of Minneapolis, who stepped up to the podium and, without having all the facts, chose to inflame and blame.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
That is not leadership. That is sedition. It's encouraging people to interfere with the lawful actions of the state. And when a mayor uses his office to delegitimize federal law enforcement in the immediate aftermath of a deadly incident, it's not protecting his city. He's putting people in danger.
They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed.
Let's be clear. ICE enforces laws democratically passed by Congress, signed by presidents elected by the American people. You can oppose those laws. You can campaign against them, but you do not get to incite resistance to their enforcement. Here is the cause and effect reality that Jacob Frey refuses to own. For years, Democrat politicians have described ICE as masked kidnappers, as an occupying force, as the Gestapo, as anything other than law enforcement. That's the kind of rhetoric that sends protesters, rioters, into the streets to physically interfere. And today, we saw the real-world consequences.
Get out of it. Hey, let the vehicle leave.
You guys are breaking families, man. You can't be doing that.
This is not cosplay protest theater. This is not high school political performance. This is real life. We will determine whether the officer acted within the law. That process must be respected. But this much is already clear. The confrontation itself didn't begin with that agent. It began with reckless political rhetoric that directly put those amenable civilians directly in the path of armed law enforcement. This tragedy is not on an ICE agent defending himself from a moving vehicle. It is on the politicians who set this in motion. It is on Jacob Frey, a man who behaves this way, who rushes to judgment, who undermines lawful authority and inflames public hostility in the aftermath of a death, has no place in American leadership. Not as mayor, not as a public servant, not as a dog catcher, not anywhere near power. Words create reality. Leaders choose those words, and today Jacob Frey chose recklessness, and people paid the price and might continue to pay the price. The sad thing is today's display of demonizing ICE isn't shocking because it isn't new.
What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets, and in this case, quite literally killing people. So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
So let's go right to Mike Tobin. He is standing by there in Minneapolis. Mike, what's the latest?
And Dana, DHS says that vehicle involved in this shooting was weaponized and directed at the agents. They say the agent who fired the shots was in fear of his life and the lives of his fellow agents. There are a number of videos circulating on social media right now. The ones in which you can see the agent who fired the shots, you will see 3 agents get out onto Portland Avenue and approach that vehicle. One of the agents was standing directly in front of that Honda SUV when it lunged forward. He fired 2 shots through the windshield. One of them, at least, struck this woman and killed her. Now, Jacob Frey, you heard him say that he doesn't buy the narrative at all, using the phrase BS there. Governor Tim Walz, with all the heat that he has been under lately, he said what he wants now is to get federal agents out of Minnesota.
We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait.
Now, chaos ensued immediately after the shooting. People descended on the scenes. They tried to push through the outer perimeter of the federal agents who were trying to keep the crime scene secure. That is when we saw the pepper spray come out. Tear gas came out a couple of times during the day today. The crowd remained on that scene, growing to about 400 strong at one point. But ultimately, they towed away that Honda SUV and a couple of vehicles that were hit by the car after the shooting, and that cleared the scene, and all law enforcement, federal agents had pulled out first, and local law enforcement maintained the scene, but there was still friction with the local law enforcement, meaning Minneapolis state and sheriff's deputies. They pulled all of them out, and that turned the protests at the shooting scene into a march. The march ultimately dissipated. You now have about 150 people still at that scene in South Minneapolis, and the crowd is quite emotional. Dana?
Mike, thank you so much. And I just want everybody to have a chance to hear from the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. She reacted earlier.
You asked about a shooting that we just had in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened, it was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him.
All right, we'll get this news analyzed by the folks here at the table. Lawrence, vehicles can be used as a weapon. Is that what you think happened here?
Well, they are considered weapons. I want to handle this a little bit differently. I don't want to tell the audience what to think, but I do want to offer them some perspective as they analyze the video. A couple things that I looked at immediately is how the responding officers respond immediately. There's a vehicle that is clearly obstructing them. The threat level is high, but the responding officers go toward the vehicle and they don't go with their weapons drawn. Typically, in a case like that, their weapons would be drawn because you have obstruction that's going on. You don't know who's in the vehicle. You don't know what's in the vehicle, but they don't. The responding officer on the right-hand side, and you'll see it in the video, that ends up being the person to shoot the suspect there at the time, has his phone video in it. You see a cell phone the entire time. He then makes his way, which is standard operating procedure. When you don't see someone that's in the passenger side, you want to get a clear view of the windshield so you can see who's in the vehicle, right? So he's positioned there. There's another officer that's on that side where the suspect is that's driving the car. He still has his cell phone filming the entire thing. Now then, as they're given the command to stop the car, one of the officers puts his arm into the vehicle, because that's a dangerous situation. His gun is still not drawn. His arm is in the car trying to open the door, all right? The officer, at some point, when you see the other angle, and we're showing it right here, that's in the front, that has his cell phone, when the vehicle starts to go forward, puts his phone down, draws his guns, and fires a shot in the front of the windshield, striking the suspect. Those angles are important. I'll add one more piece to this, because a vehicle can be a weapon. I'm learning from my sources within the department, both in the White House as well in ICE. The officer that shot the shot has been drugged before. Now, John Roberts has this reporting, as well as my sources have confirmed it. Now, there could be body cam that says this is not true. They could say that these sources are wrong. But right now, based on the evidence that we have right now that is available to everyone, it looks like a clean shoot.
Mm-hmm. Emily, I want to just play for you from Governor Walz. He's been in the news a lot lately, and for other reasons, which we might get to a little bit later, on the fraud there in Minneapolis and the welfare fraud. But he also came out in front of the cameras today, talked about the shooting.
We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life.
Any thoughts here on the legalities or on those comments?
Right. Well, first of all, him mentioning reality TV and recklessness, those are his comments. And he's the one that is theatrical and dynamic on stages, calling President Trump ICE agents, Gestapo, and Nazis. So we can get to that a little bit later as well, because I do want to focus on the legalities for a second. So for those that on the left that have been jumping to conclusions that this is murder and it wasn't self-defense, including the mayor, which is so, speaking of reckless, absolutely worthless, and such a rotten form of leadership to come out of the gate and say it was not self-defense. But here's the standard that officers abide by. First of all, if the officer reasonably believes that the suspect poses an imminent threat, not just of actual deadly injury, but of serious imminent injury, then that can be justified in shooting. And the factors, including just last year by the Supreme Court, involve the totality of circumstances. So let's look at the totality of circumstances here. First of all, they clearly said on multiple angles of those video, you can hear them saying, get out of the car. When a suspect is requested to get out of the car, that means that it is a temporary investigative detention. That is a Fourth Amendment seizure. That subject was not allowed to leave, not free to leave. And yet we saw that individual behind the wheel of the car use a motor vehicle to ram out of the way, to surge and gas out of the way. Well, you talked about it being used as a weapon. Motor vehicles accounted for a third of officer deaths in the last decade. Wow. And it spiked even more than that in the last year. So absolutely right that it poses an extreme risk to their safety. And when we talk about the rhetoric, as the no self-defense and the ICE agents are Gestapo and the like, that too feeds into the totality of the circumstances. When this officer reasonably believes that they are in fear of imminent injury, serious injury or death. And furthermore, that standard also accounts for potential injury or of risk of injury to bystanders. So while fleeing isn't enough, fleeing in a deadly weapon with bystanders and other officers everywhere, including that one that I saw on the thing sort of limping, because I think that did pull the trigger, that clearly made contact with that vehicle, well, then that shows you all you need to know.
I want to go to Laura Ingraham, who is the host of the Ingraham Angle. She will be heading to Minneapolis tomorrow. Laura, thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you as well. I just want to play this soundbite from Tim Walz as we wait for him to speak in front of the cameras, Laura. This is back on May 17th of 2025. Here's what he said about Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. Watch this.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
All right, and Laura, this is what President Trump just posted. I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis. It's a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the clip, hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety. The reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just doing the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate, writes the president. Laura, your thoughts?
Well, I think when you look at this, and Martha, over the years since George Floyd, almost every summer, I've gone back and done assessment reports on the ground about how things have been there since Floyd. And I would say this is the legacy of the normalization of violence and disrespect toward law enforcement that was legitimized and in many ways celebrated, mostly by the Democrats, far left, agitators for years. And once again, Minneapolis is ground zero for this. And so for Frey to come out and Walz to come out as they're engulfed in this Somali fraud controversy that you've covered so well, for them to come out and pass judgment on this case and once again fan the flames of distrust and loathing against law enforcement will breed more of this. There will be more violence, perhaps tonight. I hope not. There will be more unrest across the country. And this is, again, this is the same place where we saw ACAB graffiti all over Minneapolis, St. Paul for years. And it's still there, by the way. All cops are B-word. And celebrated. Oh, great, good on you. Glad you're out there. Glad you're protesting. And I'm so glad you mentioned that I believe the 3rd police precinct, if I'm correct, 3rd police precinct was burned to the ground. It still stands there as a monument to anarchy. The building is abandoned, never been rebuilt. That's the legacy of this. Now we have someone dead, convinced perhaps that, gosh, you have to do everything you can to stop the Gestapo. I mean, if the Gestapo is really here amongst us, who among us wouldn't do everything we could to protect others? So it's irresponsible. It's incitement to violence at its core. And for them to come out and pass judgment on this case, it's actually, I'd say it's breathtaking, but it's utterly predictable.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Laura, and your coverage from there has been really insightful, and I think it's great to continue to look at the situation since that day. We went out there a couple of years ago. I spoke with people in neighborhoods around Minneapolis who were terrified because the police, their police presence was diminished so greatly that they were having, people getting shot in drive-by shootings. They had no police presence on the streets. They said, we want more police, not fewer police.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And I will never forget that night when we watched the cars, the police officers leaving in droves, a parade of lights, leaving the 3rd precinct, and people just taking it over and turning the chairs and filing cabinets upside down, and it was being sprayed with water everywhere. It's unbelievable.
And the fact that today we're watching elected officials who swore an oath to protect and defend their citizens, that they're out there continuing the same villainization of these hardworking men and women, these patriots who are standing up for law enforcement. Again, they're on the side of the criminals and against law enforcement. This is a narrative that the American people know very well. We've seen it in Seattle, Portland, New York. We've seen it in Los Angeles, and we're seeing it, sadly, again in Minneapolis. And the people who suffer the most, as always, are the people with the least. And the Democrats are doing this. This is not a Republican thing. This is a Democrat thing. So own it, Tim Walz. Own it, Jacob Frey. No amount of dancing to the crowd or singing or gesticulating is going to change the fact that you put targets on the backs of these ICE agents. Someone almost ran over this ICE agent. ICE agent looks like was defending himself or herself. And what are we supposed to do? Let them all get run over? Would they be happy then? I'm disgusted. I'm sorry I'm getting a little heated here, but I'm disgusted by this today.
Yeah. I remember Jacob Frey, I believe, admitting his own white privilege. He has a long record of going down that road. And here
Crying.
we are today. Yeah,
crying to a friend of the crowd, emoting, because that's what we really want to see in our mayor.
It's very emotional today. That there's a word to the wise there. When you're in charge, it's good to leave your emotion a little bit to the side if you're going to say that the investigation is just beginning. It's a leadership issue. Laura, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. We will see you tonight at 7 o'clock and look forward to your coverage in Minnesota tomorrow. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.